Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video here on iStarly TV. Today we're going to talk about some exciting news that has been announced for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and that is that we have our next 7-star raid, which you can already see by the title. Greninja is coming to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet very soon. Now, first of all, real quick, I want to talk about, they've announced a few upcoming raid events. First of all, at the end of this week, I think starting on January 20th, it's going to be a raid event featuring Drifblim in Pokemon Scarlet, or Drifblim in Pokemon Scarlet and Miss Magius in Pokemon Violet. You know, if you need those for your Pokedex, that's cool, or if you want them for competitive battling, that could be a good option. And then after the Greninja event, I think around Valentine's Day, there's going to be a Tandemaus event, which is going to be the Tera Fairy type. Anyway, let's get to Greninja here. So this is really exciting stuff. Now, we've learned a few things here that we can infer from this announcement, and that is that we seem to be getting about one 7-star Tera Raid event about once per month. And it does seem like this is their opportunity to add Pokemon who are not like officially in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Pokedex to the game, which I think is extremely exciting because it's kind of like we're getting like a new Pokemon each month. Not a new Pokemon, but like a new Pokemon to Scarlet and Violet each month, if that makes any sense. And you know, if you've seen in the past when there were like data mine leaks, there are a good chunk of Pokemon that are in the code for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that are not like actually in the game right now. And of course that includes Charizard, Cinderace, and now Greninja. And there's a few other starters from other regions that are also in the code. And so it's cool. Maybe we'll see those next month, right? But either way, let's talk about Greninja here. I know that we've seen a lot of speculation for what Greninja could be because, you know, now we've had 2 of these raid events. The Charizard one, I think once we solved it as far as soloing goes, and even with teams, right? It ended up being pretty easy, I would say, you know, especially when you soloed it with Fluttermane. It was, you know, in my opinion, it was really easy. I almost never lost a Charizard raid once I, you know, implemented the Fluttermane strategy. And then with Cinderace, it took a little longer. I think I would personally say Cinderace was a little bit harder to solo, but the kind of go-to strategy ended up being Slowbro, right? Although there were a few other Pokemon definitely that could take it down. And once again, if you're playing with friends, these are always going to be easy. I think once we kind of find out in general what works, there's going to be a lot of options for when you're playing together with people you know. The big problem is when you're playing online with random people. I've heard a lot of horror stories, and I've heard a lot of, you know, situations where people kind of just don't know what the heck they're doing, or people always bring Azumarill even when it's not best suited. And of course, Greninja Raid, I didn't mention this, but this Greninja is going to be the Tera Poison type. So these Tera Raids are so interesting because what they end up doing is it's almost like the Pokemon has 3 types. You know, they have their main, well, I guess with Cinderace it would have been 2 types, but they have their main types, and then, which Greninja's is Water and Dark, which means that, you know, from an offensive standpoint, they have Water and Dark moves that are going to hit really hard. And then from a defensive standpoint, they are a poison, or in Greninja's case, it'll be a poison type. Greninja also learned some poison moves. So let's talk about Greninja's moveset so we can kind of, because that's what I've seen people online doing. I kind of feel like this is going to be the hardest raid to plan for. You know, with Charizard, it was kind of easy. You kind of said, okay, bring some fairy type Pokemon, bring Azumarill, bring Doxbun. I didn't see too many people talking about Fluttermane before the Charizard event, but once the Charizard event started and people realized Fluttermane was really good, it became one of the best Pokemon. And then with Cinderace, you know, people were like, okay, maybe some Pelipper, maybe some Slowbro, maybe some Armarouge, and those also ended up being pretty decent as well. But this time around, it's really hard to plan for Greninja. First of all, because it basically has 3 types, like Water, Dark, and Poison. And all 3 of those types cover each other decently well. Like, it's really hard to pick a Pokemon that can absolutely wall Greninja's moves. Like, once again, for Charizard, we had, if you had a Azumarill, for example, it's Water and Fairy. Water resists Fire. Fairy is immune to Dragon. You know, Fairy also resists the fighting type coverage that Charizard had access to. And so it only ended up being able to be hit by the flying type moves. And then with Cinderace, it was kind of similar. There were some Pokemon that resisted most of its moves, except Flying type. Flying is always like the good coverage option. But with Greninja, if you look at its move pool and also its stats, Greninja's stats are really interesting as well because it has a pretty high special attack stat. It's base 103, which is like pretty solid, and then base 95 attack. So it can actually be a mixed attacker, and that's actually what I'm most afraid of because, you know, Charizard was a purely special attacker. So if you set up Calm Minds or set up Light Screen, you could easily take all of its hits. With Cinderace, it was a purely physical attacker. If you set up Iron Defenses, which was the go-to strategy, or if you set up Reflex, you could pretty much take, or lower its attack stat, you can pretty much take all its hits. With Greninja, if it happens to be a mixed attacker, that's actually going to be really scary, and that's really going to change what we think you might be able to bring to the raids. Because if you bring a Pokemon with, I don't know, for example, Chilling Water or a move that lowers its attack stat, it's going to hit you really hard from a special side. Or if you bring Light Screen, then it can hit you from the physical side. So I don't know. I think that this Pokemon has so much potential to be really scary. Anyways, the moves that Greninja gets, because again, its data is in the code. So if you look on, you can actually look on Cerebi and you can pull up Greninja in Scarlet and Violet, and it'll show you all of the moves that it gets by level up, all of the TMs it can learn in Scarlet and Violet, as well as egg moves. So of course, water type stab and dark type stab are a must, and you can absolutely expect it to have those. Maybe Hydro Pump, maybe Surf as far as the water type moves are concerned. Of course, if it's Hydro Pump, there's a chance it can miss, so that can be pretty good. And then from the dark type coverage, it'll probably be Dark Pulse, which is always really good. From there, Greninja does have access to fighting type coverage, such as in the form of Brick Break. So, you know, if you try to bring a Pokemon that's weak to fighting, that could be a big issue. Greninja also, of course, will have ice type moves. So if you try to bring like a ground type Pokemon, I've seen a lot of people talking about Clodsire because Clodsire has Water Absorb and then also is a poison type. So it, you know, it'll resist Greninja's poison moves. And then with Water Absorb, it's basically immune to the water type moves. However, Greninja also learns Extra Sensory. So between Extra Sensory and Ice Beam, I think that makes it so that Clodsire might not be a great choice. Now, at the end of the day, first of all, we don't know which of these moves Greninja is going to know. And I think it's just scary because Greninja seems to have a much wider move pool as far as coverage is concerned that it can pull from. And, you know, with Cinderace, it basically knew 5 moves. It had 4 offensive moves and then Bulk Up. With Charizard, I think it had about 5 or 6 moves as well. And so I expect the same to be the case with Greninja as well. So it'll go, you know, it'll have maybe 4 or 5 different offensive moves that it can use. And then I'm assuming it'll also have a form of like a setup move. Usually these Pokemon will attack on effectively turn 0, like right before the raid even starts, they get off a free attack. Charizard would always go for Overheat and then reset its stats. And then Cinderace would always go for a Bulk Up right away. So we don't know what's going to happen with Greninja. Maybe it'll go for a Swords Dance. Maybe it'll go for a Nasty Plot if it learns that. If it learns Nasty Plot, that's actually pretty OP as well. Maybe it'll go for a Hydro Pump or a Gunk Shot. Who knows? But the possibilities are just so high with Greninja that it's pretty scary. So yeah, my first thought for this is to maybe bring a bulky water type Pokemon. Just like if you have a Pokemon that's like pure water type, something like maybe Vaporeon, for example, because obviously you're immune to the water type moves, but water is just a solid defensive type. So, you know, if that means you can probably take hits from like Dark Pulse and, you know, Gunk Shot if it comes to that. Also, you know, Greninja has pretty decent offensive stats, but they're also significantly weaker than Cinderace. Cinderace has a high base attack stat, so its physical attacks, even unboosted, were able to hit really hard. And of course, Cinderace was setting up bulk ups, which made it terrifying. Really, I guess I think I looked through it and it does not look like Greninja gets Nasty Plot, but it definitely does get Swords Dance. So if Greninja gets Swords Dance, that is scary too, because that'll boost its attack stat even further. And so that'll mean it will hit really hard from the physical side. But again, like I said, it's really hard to prepare. I actually don't think you should prepare any Pokemon for this raid. Maybe if you want to go Clodsire, but like I said, if all they need to do is put either Extra Sensory or Ice Beam on Greninja, and then Clodsire's kind of dead weight. So this seems like a much harder raid to plan for. Usually once the raid is out and people play it for the first time, develop a strategy, then they can tell everyone what works or whatever. But obviously if you want to try the raid right away, then you do need to prepare something. But I just don't know what, and I don't know what the EVs would be, because again, going back to the Cinderace raid, with a lot of the Pokemon I built, I went max HP and max special attack, because obviously you just want to tank hits really well and then hit really hard from the special side. However, what ended up being basically the correct answer was max defense and max special attack, because you actually take physical hits better if you have max defense than if you have max HP. And so I didn't know that at first, or I didn't think about that at first. But with Greninja, again, if it's a mixed attacker, you kind of just can't do that. You can't go, unless you go max defense and max special defense, but then your offensive stat is really low. And if you're like me and you want to try to solo these raids, it's just a lot harder. Because personally, I think of it more from a solo perspective. But again, if you have a group of friends who will play together, it kind of you'll be fine. Like, just build Pokemon that you think are going to be generally good, and you'll be perfectly fine. But from a solo perspective, I do think this is going to be a little scarier, and I'm definitely scared of it. But yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comments. I'm trying to think of other like bulky dark types, like maybe something like a King Gambit, because King Gambit has a lot of bulk. Maybe King Gambit with max attack and max special defense. And then I just remembered, of course, that Greninja gets fighting type moves. I feel like if there's any Pokemon you think about that you think, oh, this Pokemon seems like it's good against Greninja, you think like, oh, it's good against water and dark, and then you think, oh wait, Greninja can kill it with a fighting move, or Greninja can kill it with a psychic move, or an ice move, or whatever. So, and Greninja does also learn acrobatics as well. Like I said, Greninja just learns everything as far as coverage is concerned. It also has Gunk Shot, which is going to hit really hard. So I guess steel types are also good, but then once again, it learns fighting type moves. So yeah, I think this will be fun to theory craft. If you've seen anything online that people have been talking about that sounds really good, let me know in the comments. But again, Pokemon that I've seen commonly brought up are Clodsire and other bulky water types. But every time I see someone bring up a Pokemon, I think to myself like, wait, but then it's just gonna die to this move, right? Anyways, this is a lot of fun, and either way, I'm super excited for Greninja. Like, Greninja is just an awesome Pokemon. I mean, who doesn't love Greninja? I'm gonna catch it. I'm gonna breed a shiny. It's really cool. I love Greninja so much. And so this is really exciting news. It's gonna be on January 27th. I don't know if I actually said that yet already, but January 27th, which is towards the end of this month, 27th through 29th, and then they will be bringing it back probably a couple weeks later in February, like they've been doing with the other raids. So if you miss your chance the first time around, you will get another chance to catch Greninja in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So let me know what you think about this. Let me know in the comments who you think might be some good Pokemon to take on Greninja in Scarlet and Violet. And yeah, maybe once we get closer and once I see more concrete examples, I'll make maybe another video showing like what sounds good. But like I said, I think this is going to be the hardest raid event to plan for so far, because Greninja just, has a lot of different moves it can learn, and it can be a physical attacker or a special attacker or a mixed attacker, which I think throws a big curveball into everything that we can plan for. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, please subscribe for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet videos. Please click the bell so you get notifications when I do make new videos, which is very often. And I hope you have a great day.